Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 15 of the Creative Pause. My name is Susan Padron, and I am here with my co-host, who I will allow to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Stacey Faye. I'm Stacey Faye Jory. Good to be with you all today. Susan and I created this show because we know that all of us are in this time of solitude and fear and a lot of tumultuous emotions. And we're here to cultivate a space of some joy, some happiness, and a respite in your day. So we're very excited today because all of us are stuck in our houses with people, right? With our partners or ourselves or our children. And so today we're talking about relationships with Kari, and we're very, very excited about that. But before we introduce Kari more formally and share Kari's quote with you, we wanted to check in to see how you're doing. We do this on every episode. And continue to feel it's a really important piece of it to just kind of be real, see how everyone's doing, and acknowledge that we're in this unprecedented time. And so, while all of us may not be comfortable talking about feelings this much, it's important. And so that's what we're here to do. So how are we doing today is the question. So I think, all of us should take a moment to think about that. Write in the chat box if you're there live. If you're listening to the recording, write in your journal or say it out loud, and I can start. So how am I doing today? Today was an interesting day. It was a mix of good and bad. I would say a lot of the day I was definitely battling my toddler for, he can be pretty strong-willed, and we're potty training, and I swear I must have spent almost 3 hours of my day trying to work around potty training while I was simultaneously trying to do like a dance video to keep myself somewhat sane and in shape, and at 37 weeks pregnant and all this. So that was, I definitely had some trying moments with sort of battle of the wills today with him. So that made for a more difficult day. But then I shared in a networking group this afternoon about the creative pause and what we're doing here and how that's been a pivot for me. It's a way in which I've pivoted my attention and my energy in a more positive direction. And that felt really good to share that and to get that out there. So my day is a mix of both, I'd say, today. How about you, Susan?
Yeah, today's been okay. I know I shared in the last few episodes how I've been having some challenges with my little guy as well, which when you're stuck at home, or when you're, I shouldn't say stuck, when you're at home in these different circumstances with a strong-willed child or a strong-willed partner, I guess, as we'll talk about later too, how they're interacting with you can absolutely affect how your day goes. So Honey Bunny and I had a few challenging days back to back, but today was a little bit better. Confession moment, we decided to bring in bribery to our parenting. And I have to say it's been quite effective. So if you are kind of at your wit's end or looking for other options in your parenting toolkit, the occasional method of bribery is supported on this podcast, or not podcast, web series, on this show, I should say. Right, Stacey? I feel like you can, yeah, Stacey's nodding.
Yes. All kinds of weird ways where, I don't know if I call it bribery or not, but weird ways that we're trying to get our toddler just to eat his food lately. So yeah.
So because of that additional motivation, we've had a lot less fights and battles today. So it's been just an easier day overall, which has been nice. And I just felt really inspired from the episode yesterday with Sarah from EcoBoda, and I want to press all of the flowers and weeds in my backyard now. And I'm excited to have Kari on. But Kari, how are you, my dear?
Doing relatively well. Also have a toddler at home, which makes things really interesting. And she has been in rare form the last few days, so also a few challenges. There must be something going on in the cosmos that's affecting all the toddlers, because it's just been an unprecedentedly difficult couple of days with her. And we're also potty training, which is extra frustrating. Already way on the bribery train, so that's like already happening in our house. Today, all I could get her to eat was pretzels, so she said pretzels for 2 meals, and I'm just going with it. A lot of like working to drop kind of my own internal judgment about what's best and what's not, and what I should or should not be doing as a mother. Also, lots of trying to drop judgment around my business and what I should or should not be doing. And my husband and our older children are all on spring break. And I struggle with like the lack of schedule. So it's one thing for me when everyone gets up and does schoolwork for a certain number of hours, and then the day kind of flows in a predictable way. And it's been a little unpredictable because everyone's off right now. So I struggle with the lack of structure. Whereas they don't have personalities where they prioritize that as much. So that's been challenging for me. But I'm trying to, keep perspective and gratitude, and we're all safe and we're here and we're healthy, and just lots of reminding myself that internally.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I think gratitude plays a big part in just getting through the day to day. And sometimes when we're having those extra challenging moments, it can be even more difficult to bring in gratitude. But it's something that should definitely try to be part of it as much as possible, as realistic as it can be. So Kari shared a quote with us, and I'm gonna pull up in just a second. Yay. Okay. So, oh my gosh, for real? I had the right one. You saw it. It was the right quote. And then I think my computer is really excited, Kari, that we're having Jess Naeem on tomorrow. And my computer knows that the two of you are so close and was like, we want to share Jess's quote too. But this is the quote that Kari shared with us says, self-love isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about recognizing that you're worthy and enough even when you don't. Kari, do you want to share why you chose that one for us today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that because when you invited me to be on the show, you had kind of shared your goals and your motivation for creating it. And especially through that and through my own work with people through this sort of unprecedented time, I'm noticing and witnessing for myself and for other people a lot of emotions and feelings that feel less than stellar. They don't feel positive all the time. And sometimes I think that one of the biggest struggles that we have, especially in the sort of self-love movement, is thinking that we have to feel good in order to be in a place of loving ourselves. And I just feel really motivated to kind of free people from that expectation and help all of us realize that our state of self-love is not dependent on our emotions in that moment, and that we're worthy and we're enough even when we're having negative emotions or negative reactions to what's happening around us. And it doesn't mean that we aren't practicing self-love. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to honor and acknowledge our feelings for what they are.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I feel like we all need that right now for sure. So now get to introduce Kari officially. So Kari is a love and dating coach. She's also a speaker and author, and she helps women from all over the world to create better love by showing up as creative, empowered forces in their lives. Kari has over a decade of experience, with all different powerful, proven modalities, intuitive coaching, and some, as she puts it, been there, done that, tough love. And Kari makes it possible for her clients to transform their love lives from the ground up, refreshing perspectives on dating and improving existing relationships to ultimately finding love within themselves to create relationships that are worth falling for. So Kari is here with us today to help all of us, or as much of us as possible, really manage these times that we are spending with our partners or with ourselves, and how we can deal with all of that. So I am so thrilled to have Kari on today to just share her wonderful wisdom. So Kari, my dear, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for having me. Again, sort of my goal during this time for everyone that I'm interacting with through my profession is really to help people come to their relationship experiences and struggles as things are kind of unprecedented and difficult with a real attitude of grace and understanding and kindness. Knowing that none of us were prepared for this to happen. And so having negative emotions or negative reactions or difficulties in your relationship right now, whether you're quarantined with somebody and suddenly you're spending all of your time together, or perhaps you're quarantined apart from your significant other and you're really missing each other, or even if you're single and still dating, on dating apps or having virtual dates, as a lot of people are. And I think that I have 3 tips for everyone to help sort of empower us to move through our relational challenges right now. Because whenever there's sort of an unprecedented experience of stress, and right now it happens to be collective, but these are also skills that can serve you if you and your partner are experiencing something stressful down the road. It's normal for that to show up in our interactions in our relationships. And so if you're feeling stress in your relationship right now, feelings like annoyance, frustration, tension, maybe you're having more arguments than normal, you're not sure how to navigate what's kind of happening, my first tip for everybody is to recognize that that is normal, that it's not sort of an indicator of how strong your relationship is. It's not an indicator of how viable your relationship is. If you're fighting more than normal right now or arguing more than normal right now, it's not a sign that you shouldn't be together or that you should break up. This is not really the time to make those sorts of decisions, because just as much as it may be bringing up difficulties in your relationship, it can also be an opportunity to strengthen your relationship for the future. So recognize your feelings as normal. It is okay. It's acceptable. It doesn't mean anything is wrong if you're feeling annoyed by your partner, if you're arguing more than normal, perhaps you're quarreling a lot. And it's so important not to ignore your feelings and not to feel pressure to fix them. So a lot of times, especially in the self-improvement industry, we come at our emotions and our feelings thinking that we have to fix them or make them better. If they aren't positive or if they're uncomfortable, we have to fix that. I can't be feeling that. I have to feel something different, or we act out because we feel this sort of like internal pressure of a negative emotion. And so it's really, really important that you also recognize and honor your own feelings and then communicate them in a way that doesn't disregard them, but also doesn't disregard your partner's experience. So for example, you may be noticing with your partner some anxious behaviors. Maybe they're eating all the quarantine snacks and in the wrong order, because you should eat perishable foods first and then non-perishable foods second, right? Or maybe you're working in the same space and they're like tapping their foot or they're tapping their fingers, or they have some habit that's sort of suddenly emerged that you never noticed before. And you're like, oh my God, who is this person that I'm married to? And why are you doing that? That's very normal. And remember that those behaviors can be coping mechanisms. Perhaps your partner's feeling stress or anxiety and doesn't know how to deal with it or communicate it. And so they are using coping mechanisms that you may not have had to experience before. So instead of saying to your partner in a moment of frustration or anger, because the foot tapping has been happening for the last hour and you just cannot focus, oh my God, can you stop tapping your foot before I murder you? That's what I tend to say. I think I said that to Chris the other day and I had to like come back to myself and say, oh, maybe that's not the best way to communicate those feelings. Instead, you could try something like, I'm noticing that you're tapping your foot a lot and I'm finding it really difficult to concentrate. Can we talk about how you're feeling right now? Or can we talk about where that's coming from? Is that helping you in some way? Perhaps it's something your partner does at work, for example, that helps them focus. And then when you can approach a situation with kind of mutual understanding for your feelings and your partner's experience, it kind of opens up a dialogue that's not defensive, it's not blaming, and it lets you both talk about ways to cope with that behavior or the feelings that are fueling it in ways that are productive. But you cannot do that if you are constantly in this place of trying to fix or ignore your feelings. So you want to honor your feelings and honor your partner's experience. My second tip, for all you couples who are quarantined together, or even if you're doing the long distance thing, or perhaps you're dating virtually, is we all handle stress differently. So the way that you handle stress is different from the way I handle stress, is different from the way everyone on the call handles stress. And other people may be prone to be more or less anxious about difficult circumstances than you. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's sort of coming at this with an attitude of grace and acceptance, and understanding that those those levels of anxiety and those responses to stressors and difficult times are things that we learned, most of us, in our childhood, and we don't ever think about them again. They're just impacting the way that we respond to things. And understanding that your partner may have different feelings or different reactions to what's happening around you, and that you may also, can bring up some tensions because your partner might be more anxious about the state of the world than you are, or maybe vice versa. Maybe your partner's really, really, really keen on wiping down every single grocery item with, a sanitizing wipe, and you're like, maybe that's a little much. So wherever you fall as a couple on the anxiety scale with what is happening, it's a really good sort of, while this is going on and, before we kind of go back to quote unquote normal, it's a really good piece of advice to err on the conservative side. So if you are the less anxious person in your relationship, it is your job, because you are more comfortable naturally, to then err on the side of whoever needs to be more conservative. So if your partner needs to wipe down every grocery with an individual wipe, you may find yourself thinking that that's unnecessary, and maybe it's a waste of time, and maybe it gives you anxiety because you don't understand it. But allow them to have that sort of extra level of conservatism. If your partner's very nervous about going to the grocery store because it feels unsafe for them, then maybe you volunteer to go. Or maybe you agree to grocery delivery if it's something you can afford. If your partner is more nervous, if you're maybe not quarantined together and your partner is more nervous about getting together and having a date because you don't want to, cross-infect, or you want to stay as safe as possible, then you, as the less anxious person, can come up with some maybe virtual alternatives to how you can meet or spend time together that don't involve physically meeting. So for all couples out there, wherever you kind of are in your quarantine situation, erring on the conservative side is really, really helpful. And if you can move through your relationship with that assumption, whoever's more anxious, we err on that side so they feel safe and comfortable. It can help kind of avoid a lot of unnecessary arguments, unnecessary tensions. And my third and final tip is to create space and boundaries. And creating space and boundaries, especially in this time, is so important. And when I say creating space and boundaries, I mean both creating space so that you can be apart, even if you're just in different rooms, or someone gets to watch their TV show by themselves for an hour, or I get to journal in my bedroom by myself for an hour while my husband kind of occupies our 2-year-old. So each person should have that available time by themselves each and every day. So that's a discussion that you can have with your partner. How can we carve out time for each other to be separate, even if it means you handle the kids for this amount of time while I have this alone time, and then I'll do the same for you. And then each person should be able to use that time however they want to use that time, without any judgment or criticisms about whatever it is they need in that moment. And that also includes creating intentional time to be together. So something that's so important, and something I've been kind of communicating to all of my clients and all the people that I've been working through as we kind of navigate this, is, can you create intentional time together? You still should be having date nights. You might have to be a little more creative about how that happens. Maybe it's after the kids go to bed. Maybe you watch a movie, or you order takeout and support any of the great restaurants, local restaurants that, are really relying on takeout business right now. Maybe you open a bottle of wine, or you do an art activity or a puzzle or something together. Just intentional time together, because being in the same apartment or the same house is not the same as spending intentional time together. And if we can take the opportunity to still value and make our relationships important, it can be really, really helpful to kind of navigating the situation moving forward. And that can include also just small gestures for your partner or for each other throughout the day. Maybe your partner's on a work call and you bring him coffee just because. So you want to really be intentional about those smaller gestures, and still about planning intentional time together and intentional time apart. And because of the circumstance, it has to be planned. So it's not you can't expect it to just kind of happen because you happen to be together and everyone needs it. You and your partner are going to have the understanding and the foresight to say, okay, this is crazy, and we don't know how long we're going to be together in this house with no end in sight. So perhaps we need to schedule time apart each day or every other day if that works better for you. And we know maybe once a week or twice a week or a few times a week, we need to schedule some intentional time together, little date nights, little gestures, with no pressure for it to be something huge or complicated, but just so that you and your partner are still connecting with intention and with purpose, and not just sort of occupying the same space together, if that makes sense. With that, I will just add that remember that as we are all experiencing these kind of changing, unprecedented times, that your values and what's important and what you need, both for yourself and from yourself and from your partner, are naturally going to change because you're experiencing something you've never experienced before. What you need to feel okay may be different from what you ordinarily need to feel okay. And the only way to ensure that your relationship is healthy and sustainable through this time is if you both feel free and able to communicate what it is that you need. Please do not fall into the trap of expecting your partner, whether you're quarantined with them or separate from them, to guess what it is that you need in this time. Let them know. It makes things so much easier. And let them know with non-blaming language. So it isn't, you never pay attention to me and you're always working. It's, I really need some, one-on-one time with you so that I can feel comfortable while we go through this. Can we plan that for, sometime in the next day or two? You see the difference. The response will be different because the asking is different. But definitely don't expect your partner to just guess what you need to be okay. You need to take the time. We all need to take the time to really kind of assess how we're feeling, just like we did at the beginning of this amazing call, and figure out what it is that we need during this time to feel loved and safe and comfortable. And then once we're aware of what that is, we need to be able to communicate that with our partners and say, I'd love to share this with you. There's some things that I think are important to me to feel okay during this time. And I'd love to hear what's important to you during this time so we can support each other together. And having those conversations and just being willing to ask for what you need, it seems very simple, can change your entire experience during this time together, for sure. So if anybody has any questions or comments or experiences, I would love to respond to those. How are we on time, Susan?
We're good. Oh my gosh, Kari, amazing. Oh my gosh, so much wisdom that you just shared that was so resonating with me, that I feel like is going to resonate with so many others that are hearing what you're sharing. Because I mean, I think one of the big points that you brought up that I think goes unnoticed by a lot of couples is how you phrase things and the wording that you use, and eliminating that blaming language. Because I think for some people, they allow their needs to go undiscussed or not communicated, and it just turns into this really like desperate, anxious feeling inside them, that when they get to the point that they're comfortable sharing about it or sharing that they need something, it comes out in this like explosive, critical way. And I know I've had to stop myself from doing that, just like you admitted to. And it's when you do take the time to check in with yourself, acknowledge your needs, and think about your partner as a fellow human, um, it can really make a big difference in how you communicate and work through all of that. So I love that you brought that up. Thank you.
And I think that's so true, that sometimes we wait so long to communicate what we need that we become frustrated. And and then we kind of like come out with this big giant emotional thing. Whereas I would love to see people, and one of the things I'm doing in my own marriage right now is sort of trying to practice on a daily basis, like, okay, how can I prevent us from getting to the point of having those big emotional outbursts? Can we take 5 minutes every morning and just say, okay, what do you need today? And vice versa, so that we're practicing communicating what our needs and our wants, and the ways that we need to be supported are, before we ever get to the big kind of like emotional place. And that's working really well for us. And it's also a skill that we can all take out of this quarantine and into like our relationships all the time, because it's a nice thing to do, a really sustainable practice in your relationship, whether we're kind of experiencing a global pandemic or we're not, for sure.
Yeah, before we hopped on live, Kari, you were sharing some really intense statistics with us about how the divorce rate has been affected during these times. Would you mind sharing those again, just to like really, not to be a downer, but just to stress the importance of communication and, all of those tips that you shared with us just now?
Absolutely. So, just following along with some of the resources and some of the articles and blogs that are coming out of not only other countries, but some places that are really being heavily impacted by the pandemic, New York State, California, and there was one particular article that I read that was written by a small group of divorce lawyers who have shared that their divorce inquiries over the last 4 weeks have been up by over 50%. And divorce rates in other countries who are kind of a little bit ahead of us in this kind of global pandemic situation are up, double digits of percentage wise. So there is no expectation that stressful circumstances, again, don't impact our relationships. And it's just a matter of, will we use this time to leave our relationships because it's too uncomfortable, it's too hard, it's too difficult? Or are there, proactive, sustainable ways that we can use this as a time to strengthen our relationships for future events that may be also stressful? And I think that, again, it's why I've been stressing with all of my clients, all the people I've been talking to, if we can see each other from this viewpoint of grace and understanding and kindness, and understand that we're all human, we're all reacting to something that's very unprecedented. No one was prepared to deal with this. And not only is that true for me, but it's also true for my partner. And so how can we honor each other's feelings, recognize that tensions are going to be a little bit higher, and be proactive about how we're helping support each other through this time? And really, it's an opportunity to learn more about your partner. If this is the first stressful thing you've experienced together, major event-wise, this is a really good opportunity to learn more about yourself and how you respond to stress and collective stress, and how your partner responds to stress and collective stress. And instead of saying, I can't deal with this, can you say, how can my partner and I learn to better support each other when things are difficult? I'll give a really quick example, but one of the things that my partner and I have established, my husband and I have established over the years, we've been together for a decade. And one of the things that I share with people sometimes that's a really good illustration is we both have different needs when it comes to conflict. And that's going to be a normal experience in every relationship. And so I'm an external processor. I could talk for hours. I could talk any issue or argument to death. And I want to do it right away because I have feelings and I want to say them and I want to get them out and I want it to be done. And my partner is a very internal processor. He doesn't want to talk about it right away. He wants to think about it for some indeterminate amount of time while I have anxiety while he's thinking, and he just wants space. And if I push him, I've learned over the years to have these conversations before he's ready, it leads to more conflict. And so there came a point in our relationship under some very stressful circumstances a few years ago where I said, hey, look, obviously this is happening. I want to talk about it now. You need time and space to process. Instead of just being like, well, I guess we can't resolve our conflict. What can I do? How can we kind of come to an agreement, a verbal agreement that honors both of our needs and both of our experiences? And he said to me, well, I just need time. It's not that I don't want to talk to you. I need to have it all in order in my head so that I make sure that I'm representing myself accurately. And I said, okay, I can appreciate that. But it makes me feel very anxious when you disappear into the garage for 17 hours and it feels like we never resolve it. And he said, okay, well, how could I have time and not have you be anxious about it? And we agreed that we would set a limit. So whenever we're having a conflict and he feels like he needs to go internally process and he likes to putz around in the garage while he puts his thoughts in order, he says to me, I'm pausing this argument, this discussion. I need to think, I need space. And I say, okay, how long? And so the agreement is that he gives me a finite period of time. So I don't have to guess when he's going to come back and have the conversation. He says, oh, I need an hour, or I need 30 minutes. I need 20 minutes. And whatever the time period is, I have agreed to honor that time period. As long as at the end of that time period, he has agreed to honor that he comes back and we finish the discussion. So it removes my anxiety about like, how long is this going to just sit? We're never going to talk about it. What if we go to bed and we don't resolve it? And he doesn't feel pressured to have a conversation he's not ready to have. So you can always find those kind of creative solutions if you just recognize that you and your partner are going to have different needs, different feelings, different experiences, different coping skills, and that there are ways to come together and honor everyone's experience and everyone's feelings.
That's brilliant and so helpful. And it's very similar. I have a very similar relationship with my husband too. I'm like like I just talk, and I want to talk it to death. And I want to talk it right away. And he's more of an internal processor. And it's always been that dance of how do you manage that. And I think in this time we're in, we have so little space from either, like meaning everybody has so little space from either their partner or even space to themselves. Like you mentioned, having an hour a day. And I thought to myself, like, how the hell do I do that? Like, I don't know how that's even possible, which I would love to hear that too. But it's, I think it's ever more important to think about, okay, if we on a normal basis process things like that, what does that look like in this time where we're spending so much time together and there's maybe not the same space or breathing room that there might be.
Absolutely.
On a normal basis.
I think when it comes to space during this time, it's just, it's a matter of being very on purpose. We can't expect it to just happen. So for my partner and I, for example, it's come down to, and a few of the couples that I work with, it's come down to saying, okay, like an hour a day, I need an hour. And it's about both understanding yourself and what you need for an hour to feel like it's self-care, for an hour to feel like it's relaxing and it's, okay for you. And how can your partner help you facilitate that? So for me in my relationship, sometimes the only space in my house is like the bathroom. And that's fine. We have 3 kids. So it's me, my husband, and 3 kids. And sometimes for my hour a day, I say to him, I'm going to take this book. I'm going to go into the bathroom. I'm going to lock the door. And I'm going to get in a bathtub and I'm going to read this book. And I'll get, and I'm going to stay in here as long as I can. And you're going to wrangle the 3 kids while I'm just in the bathroom by myself with nobody asking me for anything, no one needing a snack, no one needing a diaper change, no one needing any of those things. It could be, and again, you have to work with the space that you have, obviously. But it could be, there are days where he will take all 3 kids outside in the yard for 30 minutes. And I will journal for 30 minutes or read a book for 30 minutes or do whatever I know that I need to do to kind of recharge myself for 30 minutes. For him, sometimes it's like he just wants to sit in our bedroom and look at his, scroll through, social media for 30 minutes. And I have all 3 kids and I do whatever needs to be done. So it's about being purposeful, understanding what you need from that time, because it's not about the time, it's about how you use that time to refuel and replenish and take care of yourself. And what do you need from your partner to facilitate that? So if we have kids, it's a little more complicated because you're like, we have this 2-year-old, you need to handle that for me. If you're just with you and your partner, it might be a little bit easier where it's like, I'm going to be in the bedroom and you need to not be in the bedroom for this amount of time or something like that. But again, it's about being intentional, both in how do we facilitate this for each other and knowing yourself well enough to know, how do I use this time so that it feels valuable and recharging and like it's self-care to me. And maybe it's not an hour. You have to choose the time that's sustainable for you. I don't always get an hour each day. Sometimes I get 20 minutes and I use the 20 minutes the best that I can. And again, the goal is to be intentional about making that time and supporting each other and having it.
That's really helpful. I did also want to acknowledge that Dan in the chat said that he really liked the point that how our needs now may be different from what we normally need.
Yeah, so important.
Yeah, I think that, this time for a lot of people is a deep grief. And they always say, like, when somebody in your life significant, has died, you don't make quick decisions, your needs are different, your whole way of processing and viewing the world is different. And I think that's a lot of what we're in right now, for sure.
Because the loss of what we're used to, the loss of normalcy, the loss of our jobs, the loss of our schedules, the loss of our autonomy and our space is still a significant loss. And it's important to understand that for many people, our brains process loss the same way. And your brain doesn't chemically respond differently to a loss of, say, a loved one, to a loss of something that also feels important to you. And so I don't want to obviously ever disregard grief or loss of a loved one. That's an incredibly impactful and painful experience. But I think we can all benefit from recognizing that this is also a very impactful and sometimes painful, difficult experience.
Oh my gosh, Kari. Just like processing everything that you shared. And like I said before, so much of it just really like resonated hard with me in good ways. And I just want to like keep picking your brain on things for like another, I don't know, hour and be like, well, what about this? Well, what advice do you have here? We'll have to have you on again, because I'm just like, my mind has been blown over and over. Yeah. Thank you for everything that you shared, all of those tips, those suggestions, just how we can treat ourselves better as well as treating our partners and people in our lives better during these times. I'm just really grateful that you were here today and that you shared everything with us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And thank you for putting together this amazing resource and project for people during this time, because I think it's so valuable and so important to have places like this to honor our feelings and to connect. And you guys are doing great work in the world. So I appreciate you both very much.
Well, thank you so much, Kari. It's a pleasure to have you, and we couldn't do it without you and all the other guests that have brought, so much wisdom to the table. So thank you so much. And yeah, I agree. We need to have her on again. We should do like a relationship series. That could be a series in and of itself. But thank you so much, Kari. Well, we always end our episode. Oh, well, wait, before we end our episodes, Kari, where can people find you? What's the best way to find you and to be able to work with you and learn more about what you do?
Absolutely. Best places to find me are my website, which is karitumminia.com. And Instagram. So I'm very active on Instagram. My Instagram handle is just my first and last name, which is also Kari Tumminia. And I have lots of resources. I provide lots of free content, videos, and those kinds of things. So I'd be happy to connect with anybody. And those are the best places to connect for sure.
And your book, Kari, your book too.
I forgot. I do have a book out if you are dating, and it is all about essential mindset shifts to drop your dating struggle and to use dating as a proactive, purposeful tool in your life to find love. And that is available on Amazon. There's also a link on my website and on Instagram as well.
That's awesome. Well, we will link your website and your book and all of that to our new website, which just launched today. We're very excited. thecreativepauseproject.com. So you'll find Kari's episode there and also on our YouTube channel. And then we'll link the various resources to Kari on that page also. So, well, thank you so much. Our ending line that we say at every show is from a Mary Oliver poem, and it's "What will you do with your one wild and precious life?" So, what will you do with your one wild and precious relationship? I would say let's all take good care of the relationships with ourselves and with others.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Kari. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 5 p.m. where we'll have a lovely meditation that we're doing with Just Naeem.
Yay. All right. Bye.